it's really meaningless. There's just it's just a waste of time and energy. The kind of love that's being spoken of here is that agape love. That's the Greek word. I don't know if that's pronounced right, but I don't speak in Greek. I'll tell you that. and that's the kind of love that is a selfless love. It's benevolent. It's giving without worry of receiving, versus the brotherly love, which is sort of a bonding together and working together. The agape love is a step beyond that, which is very, very selfless in its operation. So he's saying without this kind of love, you can have all, if I can speak in the tongues of, I could speak, now this is the apostle saying, I could speak in all the languages of men. I could even speak in the language of angels. But if I don't have this selfless love, the selfless giving, it's worthless. I'm just making noise. I mean, that's a powerful, powerful statement in terms of putting things in perspective. Okay, so 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, this is known as the love chapter, okay, because it talks about the qualities of selfless love. And, a lot of these verses are read at weddings and things like that.
That's right, yes.
But what we don't realize in looking at this chapter is this is placed right where it is to put everything else in perspective. It's not just explaining how good selfless love is. It's saying how important it is in relation to all of the other things we have access to in our Christian lives. So now let's read verse 8, and Julius already quoted this.
Love never ends, but as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end.
Now, this is interesting, and again, this is a matter of really trying to understand what this is really saying. Love never ends. Well, I think that can be pretty clearly and easily understood. Okay? But as for prophecies, they will come to an end.
That's because they're going to all be fulfilled.
Okay. Now, as for tongues, they will cease. Now, does that mean languages are going to cease? No, not necessarily. What it's saying is the gift of prophecy is going to come to an end.
Yes.
The gift of being able to speak miraculously in other languages is going to stop. And it says, as for knowledge, it will come to an end. You read that and say, wait a minute. So we're all going to be dumb? But what it's talking about is the gift of miraculous knowledge that the apostle had referred to back in chapter 12.
Good point.
So he's looking at these gifts and saying, you know what? This quality of selfless love is something that you must master and keep throughout eternity. But these gifts that God has given us through the Spirit, the gift of prophecy, as magnificent as it is, it's going to stop. The gift of being able to speak in other languages without having known them, it's going to stop. The gift of being able to know the truth without having to study it, it will cease. So he's saying all these gifts, all the glitz, all the glitter is going to stop. But that selfless love that seems to be the thing that's underlying,
it's going to carry through.
And that's just the way. See, to me, that explains what Christianity is in a nutshell.
And it proves that those gifts were like a kickstart to Christianity. It was what was necessary at first to keep the flow going.
So you have this sense of perspective very powerfully given in the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. So now let's move on to the 14th chapter. Let's read chapter 14, verses 1 through 5.
Pursue love and strive for the spiritual gifts, and especially that you may prophesy. For those who speak in a tongue do not speak to other people but to God, for nobody understands them, since they are speaking mysteries in the Spirit. On the other hand, those who prophesy speak to other people for their upbuilding and encouragement and consolation. Those who speak in a tongue build up themselves, but those who prophesy build up the church. Now I would like all of you to speak in tongues, but even more to prophesy. One who prophesies is greater than one who speaks in tongues, unless someone interprets, so that the church may be built up.
So now he's beginning to deal with some of the specifics. He dealt with the idea of this selfless love being the centerpiece of your Christian fellowship, and now he's saying, okay, chapter 14, verse 1. Pursue love and strive for the spiritual gifts, especially that you may prophesy. Saying, if you want, and it's interesting, it seems like the gift of tongues was one that was clamored about and pursued, probably because it was very impressive.
Probably.
Okay? And it was something that was supposed to be used in public because you're communicating with people you normally couldn't communicate with.
Well, that brings a lot of attention to yourself,
doesn't it, though? Isn't that interesting? And isn't that, when you look at that and then you look back at 1 Corinthians 13 about all of the things that selfless love does, there's a grand contradiction there, isn't there?
There really is.
So he's saying, okay, you can pursue those spiritual gifts, but the gift of prophecy is so much more important.
Because it builds up the church.
Right, because it has great value to others around you. And he's saying if you're speaking a foreign language, it's not helping anybody because nobody understands it. So in the absence of an interpreter, all tongues do is reassure the one speaking that he can do it.
It's useless, it says.
Well, and it really is. It ends up not being of great value because there is no reason for it other than you're patting yourself on the back and you need long arms to do that. Okay? You're saying, look what I can do. And it's not helping anybody else, whereas the gift of prophecy, and he's making this comparison, is something that you can really give those around you something to really feed off of in a very dramatic sense. So let's do the break right now, and then we'll get into the points 1 and 2 from the other perspective because they use a couple of these scriptures for their proof.
This is Jonathan and Rick with Christian Questions on News Talk 102.3 FM, WXLM. Grab your Bibles. Don't go away. We'll be right back.